So I think the question that people should entertain when they look at this work is that I wonder if there are a lot more Carolines out there doing their own very specific kind of work which doesn't really fit into boundaries, doesn't fit into boxes or vaults, you know. I think there's a lot of lip service to doing this kind of work, particularly among performance people or people who see themselves as the cutting edge. But those folks have been generally trying to do something that they can say hasn't been done before, and it's totally invented, it totally comes out of themselves, and you know, to promote the work as a step forward, which has always been used by art, you know. I mean, go back to the Renaissance. They're talking about conceptual elements that raise them above being mere craftsmen, you know, and that's true. But I think in Caroline's case, there's a personal element that she's allowing people into her own personal space to a far greater degree than, say, somebody who covered herself with chocolate syrup to make the point that women were being covered with shit, and that this was a protest against that, which eventually became Karen Finley's war with the U.S. Senate and all kinds of very conservative and odd people who suddenly became part of the dialogue. I mean, she let them in. I don't think that Caroline is out there to, what is it, épater la bourgeoisie? To shock and awe people and get them riled up. I think she's looking to do something that's going to make them aware of possibilities and open things up, rather than to, you know, slam things down and shut them up. And that work has a kind of a benign quality that I can't say I see all over the place, you know, when I go to look at art. You know, I think everybody who's been around the block artistically is aware that you get very strong emotional triggers in art. You can't avoid seeing a lot of it and being at all sensitive before you're feeling that. So I think Caroline is giving a little something special in that she tries to move that in a direction that has a certain resolution, a certain peaceful resolution. That she wants people to see the paintings and sculptures and designs and performances, that these are all things, aspects of what how a person lives, rather than separate kind of, what would you call that kind of work? Hermetic work that has nothing to do with anything but that kind of work. You know, there's a question in the work that she does about her own personal conflicts, which of course, you know, some people will pick up on right away, and other people will, what the hell is she talking about? They'll never see it, because of what they're able to see. But what comes out of the work is not some kind of, what do they talk about these days, the merchandise of branding? That's a big buzzword now. Somebody has a certain lock on a way of looking at things, or a product of some kind of franchise. I don't think that that Caroline is out there to somehow become a Mad Max of the art world. You know, that she stands for some way of just ruthlessly pushing everybody to the side, aesthetically, and going her own course. I think what she wants to do is to allow people to come into the process at some point and give them the sense of what's happened, you know, if not a front row seat at the caged aesthetic fighting that's going on inside her mind. You know, an artist has a lot of ways they can go. There's notebooks. Anton Chekhov would do parables. One of his parables said there are 3 roads that a person can go down in life. The first road has wolves on it, and they eat him. The second road also has wolves, but he eats them. And the third road has nothing, and he eats himself. So I don't think you find that kind of darkness in Caroline's work. I don't think she's that kind of commentator on the human condition. What I think she's doing is somebody who's offering some kind of hope. When you go to look at her work, you're not going to see, well, you know, I'm thinking of figurative work, particularly dark painters in the 20th century. Who was that fellow who did the Pope? English painter? You know who I'm talking about. But I think a lot of people who've painted realistically, you know, come out of Goya, come out of Expressionism, come out of dreams, Max Beckmann. You know, these are not people who are there to really give you unalloyed visual pleasure, despite the strength and I think the beauty of a great many of those painters. I have to take exception to somebody like Francis Bacon, who makes me feel suicidal when I see that work. I don't think Caroline's work you would ever have that sensation of hopelessness, no matter how she felt, one way or the other. So I think you're getting a little something, a bit of a free ride here when you look at the work, because she's kind of resolving things for you. You can take what you want from it, but she's not leaving you with a kind of a deadly message that just says, sorry, but this is as good as it's going to get. I think there are a lot of artists who, when you see their first show, got a pretty good idea of what they'll be doing in the next 20 years. Roy Lichtenstein, I mean, those dots and the comic books, that was his baby after that first show. Andy Warhol, maybe not. I was at that first show, the bulls and the silver balloons, wallpaper and balloons. He sort of got a little bit more accessible after that. But Caroline, I don't think she knows where she's going to go with this. I don't think anybody can predict it. And I think that this is a part of the work that maybe is very difficult for people to accept, or could be, because down the road they're going to want to know what they've got. And I think that that's just the part that she has to make sure she keeps intact. Maybe she can let go of other things, but this unpredictability, this mindset, that's kind of in a way like a child's, explorative, emotionally resilient and reactive, sensational, sensual. All of these things, these are not things that you can quantify. You can't add them up and come out with a total at the bottom. She doesn't work that way. She gives you certain qualities, and you brush up against her work, and if you don't come away with a feeling, you really haven't been looking very much, because she is really trying to make you sense what she's about. Not in the direct way of, here's a narrative, follow it down, but in the sense of visual experience, what it's like to sit down with something and examine it and respond to it. And this is, I think, the reward that she wants as an artist, to have been able to also come into somebody else's personal space and talk to that. One thing that concerns me, because I have a job as somebody who brings along students and prepares them professionally. I teach them life-size sculpture, which is technical and challenging, is that I've seen fewer places than I would like to see for these people to go after they've had their training. And I think Caroline falls into that same demographic, which are young people who wind up having to work as studio assistants. Quite a few of mine wound up working for Jeff Koons, doing what I can only consider very menial work, but necessary to get the surfaces and the flashy look that he aspires to. And they have the skills to be able to afford him that. And I think there has to be some way for the Caroline Bergonzis of the world to get some sort of access to minimal funding, at least. This show she did entirely out of her own pocket, and some audience that realizes that it's in their interest to bring these people along, to give them a chance for some exposure. So I remember years ago when my daughter was an actor, she went to London for a couple of weeks, and there were special tickets for West End productions, very expensive productions, that were reserved for students. And they were very inexpensive, and they were very good seats. They were right down in the center. And I think it's because the British understood that they needed to conserve their actors and to take the young ones and to show them what the art is about. I think somebody like Caroline is showing something about what the art is about. She has something to say. And it's not the same thing that people are used to hearing and seeing over and over again. And the idea here is that she should have a chance to maybe take a little bit of a hop, skip, and a jump over the existing gallery situation and find herself on the walls of a fairly decent museum that also has something to say about the changes that are going on in this generation from what went before.